Welcome to Start With Hello, Conversations about Disability. In this episode, we are talking about tightropes, wheelbarrows, duct tape, and tic-tac-toe. Don't worry, I promise all of these have an application within your disability ministry classroom. Recently, I was out on a walk and I stumbled across a new podcast titled 4-8 Men Podcast. Now, this is not a brand new podcast, it's just new to me, and I was not familiar with the host, Christian Huff, but I did see Ben Stewart's name as I scrolled episodes, and since he has been a guest preacher at Southeast Christian Church, where I attend, I knew the episode would be good. Our whole family loves it when Ben comes to preach. And that episode that Christian did with Ben was fantastic, and I still had some miles left to log on my walk, so naturally, I followed that up with another one and just randomly selected an interview that he did with Rich Wilkerson Jr., who preaches at VU Church in Miami. They lead off the episode and mention a sermon that Rich preached titled Life in the Wheelbarrow. Now, I don't want to step on Christian's toes or Rich's toes by repeating that story here, but this story really hit me like a ton of bricks, and it has helped shift my mindset on Sunday mornings as a teacher. So I hope that they will allow me a little bit of leeway in repeating this for the purpose of this podcast. Rich mentions an old illustration he heard many years ago about Charles Blondin, who is a tightrope walker. Blondin took a wire and stretched it across Niagara Falls and crossed it, and he was always trying to up his game. And eventually, he ended up taking a wheelbarrow across this wire. Now, once he gets over to the other side, there's tons of people and they're cheering him on. Everybody's happy. Everybody's just blown away that he's done this. And when he gets over there, Blondin asks, how many people believe that I can go back to the other side? And of course, everybody, I'm sure, is like, well, you did it once. You could probably do it again. So everybody's cheering. And of course, they say that they can believe that he can do it. But then he says, okay, who wants to get in the wheelbarrow as I push you across? And naturally, everybody was silent. I can imagine anybody raising their hands for that. The premise of this illustration is that there is a big difference between just believing in Jesus and actually trusting in Jesus. When you trust in Jesus, you are actually living your life in the wheelbarrow. That was a mic drop moment for me, and it was extremely powerful as an illustration. And you might be thinking, great, yeah, I agree, but what does this wheelbarrow story have to do with tic-tac-toe and disability ministry? If you have served in disability ministry, I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to assume that somebody out there has had similar thoughts that I've had. For a long time, I thought I was the only one that had these thoughts, and because of that, I didn't really feel comfortable talking about it. I mean, no need to draw attention to myself and cause any kind of embarrassment, right? So we have a young man who attends our teen class on Sunday mornings at church. And when he comes in, he usually prefers to wear noise-canceling headphones, and he has a preferred seat over in the corner. Given that he's, for the most part, nonverbal, and that it appeared to a lot of us that he did not like noise, it was really easy to just let him sit over in the corner where he appeared to be happy. But that never really set well with me, and I always wanted our class to not leave anyone out. Sure, if you're having a bad day and you need a little bit of quiet time away from the group and there's sensory overload, I totally understand and that makes sense. But I did not want him to get in the habit of just allowing someone to come in, put on headphones, and go sit in the corner and never be engaged. I wanted everybody to feel a part of the class, however that might look for each person. So anyway, this person loves to sit in the same chair, and it's the only chair like this in the room. It's a swing type chair that has like a swivel on it. So what I started to do was I would come into class a little early and I would start moving it closer to the tables where everyone else sits. Even with him closer to everyone and more part of the class, in the back of my mind, I just still wondered, what was he hearing from our lesson? What is he actually getting the material that we're wanting to present? Is he connecting with Jesus? Now, if you've taught and been up front in a group of people before, I'm really hoping that you can relate to this scenario too. One week, our class was a little more on the chaotic side than normal. Our teen class, we have a lot of movement in there. There's a lot of personalities and there's many different diagnoses. As I was teaching, I remember looking up and I was trying to get a gauge to see, are people taking in this lesson? I was trying to see what was going on. And I honestly, it felt like not a single person in that entire room even knew I was there. Time stood still. I was like the only person moving. I was the only person talking. And it felt as if each time I looked up to try to make eye contact with anyone, they would look down or away. I think even some of the volunteers looked away as they didn't want to answer any of these questions. So everyone was in their own world. And much like the student who prefers that swivel chair, I caught myself wondering, is anybody hearing this message? Would anybody be able to talk about the lesson if asked by their parents later? Would anybody remember any of the main points just 2 days from now? Would they be able to apply any of this lesson to their daily life? And without realizing it, this was a wheelbarrow moment for me. I could have just given up. I could have just come in and played a video, asked some questions. I could have spent my time just trying to be basically a glorified babysitter. I could have done a million other things. Was I questioning the class ability to learn, retain, and apply the message being taught? Or was I really questioning my own faith and trust in Jesus? Am I solely relying on my own ability, or am I trusting Jesus in this? When I realized that absolutely must rely on Jesus for what happens in our classroom, I got to be honest, that took a ton of pressure off. One huge help was hearing actually from other teachers in our ministry that they've been in the same situation that I've been in. They also talked about how they've looked out to the class and felt like, nobody is listening to me. What are you all hearing when I'm talking? And they told me that there were times when it felt like not a single person was paying any attention to what they said and wondered what exactly was being retained. And so that kind of got me thinking. Now, our class, we love games and we also love being loud. And a lot of us love movement, some probably more than they should. So what we did was block off some time at the end of class for a fun game. And it's actually been such a success that we've been doing it for a couple months now. And as we've played this game, it's evolved and we have worked to make it more inclusive for every single person that shows up. We first started with a suction cup, ball, and some dry erase markers and a whiteboard. We drew out a large tic-tac-toe grid with a dry erase marker, and then we would take turns tossing this large suction cup ball to the whiteboard. After we split the class into two teams, which was basically us just drawing a line down the middle of the classroom, each person that wanted to play for their team got to come up and toss the suction cup ball to a square on the whiteboard. Their team was asked a question, and if they got that question right, they could mark an X or an O for their team. All of these questions were prepared ahead of time, and they served as a recap of the main points for the lesson that we taught. So this game went pretty good, and we realized that we had to start making a couple changes just to make sure that everybody would have the ability to participate. So the suction cup ball, it was a good idea and it was fun, but we ran into a couple limitations. For example, if someone uses a wheelchair, it might not be easy for them to maneuver over to the board or much less throw the ball. So there was a pretty simple solution for that. Anybody could drop something onto the floor, right? So we got some bright colored duct tape, and my suggestion would be the brighter the better. I wanted something that would really, really stand out against the color of the floor. We made a giant tic-tac-toe grid on the ground right there in the middle of class. So instead of having to toss a suction cup ball up to the whiteboard because sometimes it didn't stick and we had to help, or maybe they were trying to aim at a certain square and the thing rolled and it hit something else. So instead of all of that, we used they're basically sandbags that had X's and O's on them. And I got these from a giant outdoor tic-tac-toe set that I found on Amazon. So we have the large bright colored grid and sandbags, and that's given our whole group the option to play if they want to. Everybody has been able to do this. And again, we work through questions based on the lesson. And it's also been fun to include some questions from the previous week or two, just to make sure that those points were being remembered as well. One tip about the questions is obviously this is going to be tailored to your group. You're going to know them far better than I will. I will say for us that making the questions true or false allowed us to get through the game a little quicker and a little easier. I would, of course, throw in some really outlandish questions that were just over the top wrong. Our teens seem to really get a kick out of those. We also found that we didn't even need to really make the questions easy. In fact, I would challenge you, do not make them easy just for the purpose of your group. We have actually had to go the other direction and make them harder because we found the questions were being answered far too quickly and too easily. So we have actually been making them a lot harder just to trip folks up and make sure that they're really paying attention, because they are. If you run out of time to play one of these games, that is perfectly fine. Just going through the true or false questions at the end of class, that alone is still a good idea, and it can still be fun. We had a week where our group discussion was really good. I don't know, hopefully you all have experienced something like that where you just don't want it to stop. Everybody's got really good questions and statements and everything is just really flowing, and you don't want to just abruptly end it just for the purpose of playing a game, but everybody enjoys some type of a game or an activity at the end that we can all play. So that week, where our discussion was just so good, I opted just to keep rolling with that, and I skipped the game. With about 5 or 10 minutes left in class, I just asked all of the questions on my sheet, and it proved to be still a very fun way to end class, even without the actual game aspect. Sure, we had a couple people that wondered, why are we not throwing things today? You can throw things when you get home. Just kidding. There are a lot of fun ways to modify this based on your group size. Even if you only have one person in class, you can still play these type of games. I'm going to share links for articles that I've written about similar activities, as well as where I found this tic-tac-toe game I bought. It actually came with a small rope type grid that I believe is meant to be used outside, like it will sit in grass. And that could possibly work in your group. We opted to go with bright colored duct tape just so we could make the tic-tac-toe board as big as possible. But I'll put all the links to everything in the description and the notes of this episode so that you all can check those out. If you take anything away from listening to this episode, I would love for it to be the willingness to give the lead of your class to God. You can't control everything. And I know this for a fact because being as stubborn as I am, I have tried it. I have tried to control my disability ministry classroom. And each time that I thought that I was in control, it was an eye-opener as to how much control I didn't have at all. My encouragement is to give all of this to God and get in the wheelbarrow. Trust Him entirely with your class and see what happens. Until next time.
1 in 5 people in the world live with a disability, so it shouldn't be difficult to find lots of images to represent this. However, that's not always the case. Disability is Beautiful provides an exhaustive library of art provided by and for the disability community. Our photos reflect the beauty, diversity, and strength of the disability community. Whether you're a business owner, a content creator, or an advocate, Disability is Beautiful has photos for use in blogs, websites, social media, printed materials, business, nonprofit, or personal projects. Visit disabilityisbeautiful.com to create your free account and help us change the face of stock photography.